Hey, this is Jamie Wolf with the Message Accelerator. This is your Message in 10, Episode 1. In the world of authors and writing, you hear a lot about bestsellers and whether you're going to make a bestseller list or whether you're going to be a bestseller or you are a bestseller. And a lot of people promise to have programs to help you reach bestseller status. And that's a great goal, and I'm not saying it isn't. And there are a lot of things that will help you with your brand if you're a bestseller. There's a lot of bestsellers who sold a gazillion copies and they are making their mark in the world. But I just wanted to put it in perspective a little bit. I'm sure there's all sorts of different lists that you can look at to see who sold how many copies and when. But this is one list that I found, so let's just go through it for a second. Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill all the way back in 1937, has sold over 60 million copies. You Can Heal Your Life, written by Louise Hay in 1984, has sold over 50 million copies. Some of you may remember Dr. Benjamin Spock and the Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care, written in 1946, that sold over 50 million copies. And then there's a few others who stand out. If you're in the business world, Who Moved My Cheese made a lot of waves. Even though it was a short little book written in 1998, it sold over 26 million copies. And of course, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with Stephen Covey, written in 1989. And there's a few other versions of that book targeting teenagers and other things, sold over 25 million copies. Another one for parents, What to Expect When You're Expecting, sold over 20 million copies. Power of Positive Thinking, written back in 1952. How to Win Friends and Influence People, written back in 1936. And The Secret, of course, sold over 20 million copies and then was a video, and then there's several other books in the series. That's a significant number of books sold by each individual author. So would you agree that those 11 authors who collectively sold in excess of 350 million books over the last 82 years would be viewed as experts or as best-selling authors? My question, though, to you is any one of them a certified or credentialed expert, or are they simply people with talents and ideas who found their voice, wrote down their message, turned the message into a mission to share solutions and change lives? Well, you might say, hey, Jamie, obviously Dr. Benjamin Spock is a certified and credentialed expert because he's an MD. Well, he wrote about common sense childcare, and he may be a medical doctor, but I don't know that you need an MD to have common sense in childcare. And I would argue that as a woman and a mother who's actually given birth to a couple of kids and raised a couple of kids, that I might be more of an expert than Dr. Spock, a man who's never given birth to a child. You've got to take certification and credentialing with a grain of salt and look at it in context. Really, none of the other people who collectively have sold over 350 million copies of their books were somehow particularly credentialed in the thing that they wrote about. None of them were writing about how to fly a rocket to a moon as a PhD rocket scientist, right? If they weren't experts, what were they? Well, they were one step ahead of their readers, at least, in some cases, simply through observation or interviews or curiosity and the willingness to lead, inspire, share, and transform. You can do that, right? You can be curious. You can observe either your own behavior, how you made it through something, or observe other people and how they're handling things. You can ask questions, you can do interviews, and you can simply be willing to research it and write it all down and put it together in a message and then share that message. They did know clearly who they were writing for. They'd identified a niche to serve, and they'd identified a problem that niche wanted a solution for. So if you're stuck writing or finishing your book, this is a good topic to revisit, of knowing clearly, being super clear and super focused on who you're writing for, what niche they're in, what problem they want solved now. And that's something that the Message Accelerator goes through in quite a bit of detail. So if that's a place you're stuck, do know that the Message Accelerator can help you, or you can keep working on it yourself, but just make sure that you do get very, very clear on that. Were any of those authors going for bestseller status? Hard to know. Can't talk to the people who wrote books in the 30s. And let's just take a minute and talk about the bestseller lists. What are they? Well, the big ones are the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Amazon, and Publishers Weekly. And depending upon what genre you're writing in, what book topic you're writing on, there are bunches and bunches of different lists. But when you think of hitting the bestseller list, these are the ones that you tend to think of. And what's important for you to know if you're not familiar with bestseller lists is that there are authors who have written books that have sold a gazillion copies who have not made it onto one of these lists because these lists have very specific criteria. And then there's some people who have written books who have hit the bestseller list in a pretty remote niche, or a niche that's really fringe. They've made it to bestseller for a short period of time, which isn't to take away from them. You know, they did become bestseller, but you just need to take the nomenclature bestseller with a grain of salt, because it doesn't quite mean what it used to mean, because there are so many bestsellers out there now. I'd venture to argue that for the people, those 11 people on the list that we started talking about, that writing a book wasn't their end game, or pre-selling 5,000 copies wasn't their end game. If your focus in the past has been to sell lots of copies and you haven't achieved it yet, I really want you to know that it doesn't mean your message isn't valuable or that you aren't good enough. If you've often thought about writing a book but maybe struggled to complete it, or you did write one but struggled to make a living as an author, I know how you feel. I felt overwhelmed and frustrated and doubted that I could be a bestseller. I found that bypassing all of that and instead focusing on delivering solutions so that the right audiences get the right message at the right time to see what life will be like in the future, what they can achieve, makes you an expert and a best solver, along with automating the process so your solution reaches the people who are desperate for help and hope. This is the Message Accelerator. I'm talking to you, musers and solvers who share solutions with ease. Please remember, you are just one message away.